fancy opening here. Hey guys, I'm gonna try and rock the blue light glasses for a minute here and see how it goes. So I think it's actually helping cut down on the glare a little bit, but we'll see. Let's start with PLTR because you crazy kids are going to ask about it. I actually think it's really good that it's breaking down, that you're bidding down this morning. I know people don't want to hear that because they're long it, but I really do. I think it's actually really good that you're actually bidding down on this thing. So you don't really just want to come into, unless you had options, but I don't think you really want to come into the whirlwind. This stuff takes time. You know, you rally up, you roll back over. If you're bidding down, it means you already got weak hands, which is really what you want to see. I always go back and say, you know, how does this act at a specific level? And I think that that's very helpful. I'll show you what I mean by this. And I'll try to get to everybody today, and we'll get to the data in a second here. I'm not so sure how much the data is going to matter because obviously it's Jackson Hole tomorrow. I'll pull it up real quick just to make sure I'm not missing something. Oh, that's going to be a problem. That might be a problem. Maybe we should go over that. I wonder if that's going to, it's definitely going to lean him towards cutting rates faster. He's got a real problem on its hands here. It's a pickle. You have the highest continuing claims that you've had in probably 5 years. So I think it's 5 years. Let me just take a look real quick and then I'll flip to it. I don't think they do continuing claims there, but I can show it to you this way. I'll show it this way because it'll be easier because we have the pandemic that skews everything so much. So I'll just show it. But in 5 years, this is probably, at least into the pandemic, this is the highest that we've had. It's actually the highest reading since, I'll give you exactly, since November 13, 2021, this is the highest reading that you've had on continuing claims. Yeah, that's not great. So it does mean they probably are going to cut rates. I don't know how they're going to handle inflation if that creeps in again, but it's definitely going to be an issue for sure. All right, let's go through this. So I always look at how these names react to a very specific level when I'm addressed with that level. And we can see how we've undercut and bounced off that before, fought it, undercut, bounced. So the only thing I could really tell you about the level is it's pretty standard that, you know, unless you're over it, you probably really don't want to own it. And I don't really see anything more than that would really allude to it. What I would say from my standpoint, looking at it is, here's the, that's with pre and post. You see how it's riding the 5-day with pre and post? It's literally just riding it down with the pre and the post data. If I click off the pre and the post data, you're going to get a very different look and skewed look. So all I really see so far is just stocks that are completely, you know, a little overbought and then oversold. What I would do, and what I think is very helpful, is that I got a bunch of questions here. So let me just see if make sure I'm not doing something wrong. Okay, good. What I would do is this. I would suggest looking at names that are trading up more than the Nasdaq traded up. So I think the Nasdaq's at something like 57, went to 78.6% correction from the open, right? Something like that. So if we look at the Qs from that drop down, I think that's 78.6%, right? Isn't that what it is? Let's go take a look. I think it is. Yep. So you're at 78.6%, right? Correction. So if you take that correction off for a second and then you just go to PLTR, what I would focus on are names that got above their 78.6% on the day, because they're the ones that they bought more than they bought the market. So that's kind of where my initial gut would take me. So if I looked at something like an AMD, for example, that we would see the break, the rally, and then we'd see that, oh, we're at that 78% level. So maybe that's not the one to watch. You'd look at something like a Nvidia and you'd be like, oh, well, you got over. So you might be the one to watch. I personally don't think that, this is going to fall apart here. That's just my opinion of it. I really don't think that we're going to fall apart there. So I think there's something to that. But you could fall apart. Jackson Hole is going to be wild, guys. Like Jackson Hole is going to be really, really wild. So just understand that. It's going to definitely be an event. And he usually doesn't handle them very well. His remarks are always like offhand. And if you go back and look at the Jackson Hole dates, man, he's a mess. And, I'll get into it a little bit in tonight's video, but, he's pretty much a mess. So I would start there. The other thing I would say is just looking at the indexes themselves. If we clean this and just drop, the levels we marked yesterday are pretty decent levels. And, you can see that they held. I mean, we talked about this very clearly the other day, actually yesterday, and now you can see where you're holding. So I don't think there's much more to say. The market, the S&P might actually outperform today versus the Nasdaq because of that number, that claims number. And I'll pull that up, but that's a really bad number. You don't really want to see that. You just don't. It makes me sad. And then obviously you have down here and where you've reversed, and then all of a sudden everyone's like, psych, come on in. You've given a lot of that back. And I think if you look at from the futures perspective from that area, you've cracked that 50% level and you're not really rallying right over it. So you still have net sellers. Sometimes I find this super helpful to just take this and get rid of everything except the 50% and just stare at it. And so, okay, I mean, not for a very long period of time, nothing creepy, but like just look at it and see, how he acted right there. And, it's kind of interesting that level's, right around that 6,400. And that level is going to be, something to really watch. To me, does 6,400 become the ceiling versus the floor that it just was? It's a pickle. So I'm not really sure on that. It might become that issue. And I think that's super, super important for us to wrap our noodle around. I really do. The real question is, do we rally into him? Like if you're a fund and you're up a lot, are you playing games with this? Because a lot of these guys are killed it this year. A lot of funds killed it. So like, are you really playing games into this? I don't think so. You look at what the market's done from August, that's the 15th to Wednesday. What are you down? 2%. It's not a lot, guys. Not a lot. Not compared to where this thing can go. So, I'd watch. But your first level is really going to be that 6,400. I really think that. I think that's how you should look at it. But our levels are fairly good, so I don't see a sense in changing those. I would say that I think you have to look at it and go, I think this is where you're going. I do think you have to look at this and think like, would you want to be long going in? Isn't that crazy how it respects that 50% level just from net sellers, net buyers? Like how long are you going to want to be into his speech? Man, I'm just looking at positions. I have this INSM I bought and I just left this runner on. I only have 25% of the position size left, but I bought it like 116. I just let the runner run. Every day I come in, this freaking thing's up. So just letting it go. That's crazy, but here's a flag. You're breaking out. Huge institutional ownership on this guy too. I don't know what the drug does. I literally know nothing about it. I bought it from a technical standpoint, and I saw all this institutional ownership, but it looks like it's just going to keep going. So I'm just going to let it run. I was just using a real simple stop too. Nothing crazy. It's just not even close to doing it. So I told myself, all right, when these things when these reverse and the 8 says stop, just close the runner. And already I'm up to like 124 on it. So I tend to do that, like use a trail. sometimes with that stuff after I'm in for a long period of time. Anyway, I'm just looking at it. It's like, geez, here we go again. What else do I think is like super interesting? I got a lot of feedback on the relativism of the 50-day percentages. I actually have a model or an oscillator I created based upon that, and I add volatility to it. I might show you guys it. I create a lot of like weird stuff like that. Again, I need a life. It's crazy when you go on dates. Girls don't really want to hear about your oscillators. All right. I mean, these are all garbage, right? All our levels. They just like ran. They ran buckshot. Well, not really. I mean, they kind of faulted here. All right, let's start over here, and let's look at what we have. So the first thing we would want to do, right, is just drop the fib. And I find it helpful to explain this so that you guys can actually do this for yourselves, so you don't need me. And if we look at the level right here, we can see it. The other thing I would say to you is lethargy is setting in, guys. I can always tell by the room and who comes in, but lethargy is setting in. And I like that. When people are complacent, that's usually when institutions strike. So you're going to be active tomorrow. Tomorrow's going to be crazy. Look at that 50% level. It's nuts, right? So a long way down, man. That's what I would focus on the most. That's exactly how I focus on it. And really, you are oversold drastically here. So you would have to think that, like, if you look at the NQ, and there I go again thinking. But you have the oversold, right? So you have your bounce. So you guys have these levels, right? You can just screenshot them. So does that look warm and fuzzy? Like, does that, oh, Jesus. Does that look like, come on in, the water's fine? Not really, right? I'm going to go get some more caffeine. Give me a second. If you are on the wait list trying to get in, look for a letter today. This will be a quick going out. I'm going to shut it down, I think, for the month of September enrollment, because September is going to be crazy. So with the Fed and everything, and I talk to everybody that joins, I give them the opportunity to. So, all right, what do we got? Passion fruit. Okay. Yeah, it's not awful. that looks awful, guys. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, like, it doesn't look as good. I'm not as excited about my bounce as I was this morning. Oh, good. So you probably want to rent, not own. I almost feel like you have to retest yesterday's levels, but I don't know that you're going to. You know, I'd say questions. What's up, Julian? Where's John? John coming in. Good afternoon, John. Coming in at 8 o'clock. You know, I think you're in the right space. I think you're in the right space. I really do. I don't know if you're in the right name. I like the name a lot from a long-term perspective, but the very first thing that I did when I ran these yesterday, because you could see it coming. So there's two things I see happening, but I won't bore you with them. But if I look at something like this, right, I have a hard time with this because I'm counting out when I'm going to get a 1255 cross. And I'll show you what I mean by that, Julian. So, like, see where if you look over here at these levels, so I'm at, like, we'll go back to this day, which is last Thursday. and then you go to here, which is Thursday, right? So if I go here, I will see that that's it. The 12-day, they're over here, what I'm looking at. If I go to here and I see the 12-day was at like we'll do Thursday, 215, okay? And we'll call it 216 to make it simple, and 190 on the 55. So that's going to give me a $25 difference between those two numbers, right? So I have a $25 difference. So then I go out to here to a week, and now I'm at 203 to 193. So now I'm 10. Here I was 25. Here I'm 10, right? So within the next 5 days, if everything remains linear, just linear, I understand the market's not linear, then I'm going to have a 1255 cross. And then from there, I'd start looking at the other one. And that's not stuff I want to play with. So that becomes a concern of mine. 1222 crosses are also a concern of mine. Like I don't really want to be on the other side of those. And they're all over the place right now. Now, that said, I bought this yesterday and did quite well with it because I don't have the cross yet. And I held the 55. So I like this space a lot. I was in BWXT and I had a great trade with it. I think we got in at like 140. It gapped up and I tried to stay with it. I tried to make the relationship work, but then it undercut right there. And then that was it. I got out. I gave it some room, but now, these things look awful. So I'm not sure why. And there's a segmentation going on in uranium. And that segmentation seems to be, they want to be an OKLO, they want to be an NEE, and they want to be an SMR. Like they're the ones that they want to be in. And I don't know why that segmentation exists right now. But if I look at like LEU, I'm not really getting the same kind of love there. And I'm certainly not getting it in BWXT. So, I see a lot of people like jumping at the first chance to get into the names they want to be, like jumping to get into the GEVs and all that stuff. And I'm not saying not to, but some of the larger stagnant names or stodgier names that are in this space, you might want to watch. Let's go from there. Oh, it's perfect. Thank you. Anybody want to okay, so you're not even in an EV yet. So you're going to go down lower. So open, look, when you buy this thing, you just have to realize what you're buying, right? You're buying a dream. Someday they're going to get a CEO and someday that CEO is going to make magic. And, you've got guys that are good, that are all over this stuff, that do fundamental research, that are good, and they're all over this thing. I haven't done that type of due diligence yet. The only thing I've done with it is go for a ride. I got in at 350. I went up to like 411. I didn't sell because I have diamond hands. And then it came back to my 350 and I'm like, okay, the ride's over. I'm out. I'll come back to it, but I think that you have to kind of look at this and go, well, where am I going? Well, you got really a negative divergence here. I think you have to understand you have a fundamental story here. And so that story is going to have to develop. So I personally think the way to look at this thing longer term, like I want to bury some. So I'm looking at for when it gets down to like this $1.75 again, or starts getting into this 262 level was the other area I looked. Like, because I want to like literally bury it, like buy it, and I'll look at it in like a year and I want to pay attention to it. I'll do that with fundamental stories. There is a fundamental story here, and they could benefit greatly from rates dropping. They really could. There's a bunch of companies that could benefit greatly from rates dropping. And, if that starts to happen, I want to get involved. Like Rocket's going to benefit greatly from rates dropping. But yesterday they couldn't get out fast enough and they actually lured you in. So I don't need to go first. I was actually surprised really with Toll Brothers reaction and the XHB reaction yesterday. But I'll take it. I'll take it. Nvidia is Nvidia. I don't really have a lot to say about it. You're going to come out with earnings. I do think that, this analyst was going out on a limb saying on Wednesday they're going to lower guidance because of what they have to pay the government. I don't know that that's true because they didn't work China numbers into their model. But I think the fact that they have to pay the government anything for the privilege of dealing with somebody is a bunch of BS. Anything that leads to government intervention in business bothers me. If it's national security, then don't sell the chips, but don't put a price on them. That was all out loud, wasn't it? All right. So that's just kind of, it is what it is, man. I don't know, man. I don't really like that action. I don't like the fact that I couldn't form a hammer and get over that previous close. I don't really dig that. I like these bars. I like the fact that you're bidding down this morning. I'd be more interested on some kind of retest. That's what I'm interested in. If I don't get the right retest today, I could see me doing very, very little today, because anything that I do, I've got to deal with Itchy tomorrow at 8:30. I think it's 8:30, right? Isn't that when he does his little speech? So I want to show this. So I'm going to, because I can do things. I'm smart. Hold on. Let me grab this so you can say it, because I think this is super important. Because this is an issue, and it's not one that most people are even paying attention to because they don't even know. They don't even know what they don't know half the time when I watch this. See that right here, that level? That's where you just came in at. That's the highest continuing jobless claims number in 3 years. So, it is what it is. And what that's saying is, I didn't just file for unemployment. I've been on it and I cannot find a job. And we've seen these kind of spike up. And what people are saying is, the continuing claims aren't going up, meaning the initial, but the people that are losing their jobs, it's not going well for them to come out and get a job. If I talk to guys that are even coming out of getting their MBAs and where they're supposed to go with their MBAs, it's not going great for the majority of them. And I'm talking about guys that are coming out of top 5 schools. So it's an issue and it needs to be addressed. That's the year to put it into perspective. So I do think that they're going to cut rates. And, I do. I don't know how he's going to rationalize it with the PPI unless they think it's a one-time hit, but we'll see. I don't know. You can try. I think you got too much weight above you. I think you have too many people that are going to want to sell. So it's not really for me. Kevin, good morning from Miami. EWI. Yeah, it is doing better. I think she's on the right track there, man. You don't have your monthly chart yet. You're going to look at monthlies. We didn't close though. I do that sometimes too, though. I think she's on the right track. I think Italy's on the right track with what they're doing with luring people to live there and everything. You literally pick a number for 10 years. And if you can agree on the number, that's what people are moving there. I forget how they do it. I forget how they're picking the number, but there's some method to it where you have guys that are making a killing, but they want to have a European passport. So they're moving there and they're making, let's say they make a couple $1 million a year. They're going there and then they're paying a flat fee of $100,000 in taxes. So that's going to spur demand on the higher end of the market. And that's going to feed people actually going there because they're trying to get the birth rate up and everything. It's pretty interesting. You could be on to something. My thought on the whole Europe thing is I think it's one big trade because of the currency, but you do have these nuances. And there is a lot of defense companies in Italy and a lot of people don't know this, but there are a lot of defense companies in Italy, especially northern Italy. And you also have where they make clothing in Italy. They bring it in from China and then it's assembled in Italy. So those people, that kind of business is going to increase, Jacob, because people are not going to want to pay the China taxes, right? So they like will put the thing together in Shanghai and then they deliver the parts to Italy. If you remember, during COVID with northern Italy, everyone's like, what the heck's going on in northern Italy? People didn't know they had such a huge population of Chinese in northern Italy. And that's why. But it's super interesting what she's doing there. And, you might be on to something there. There are some drivers here that they could benefit greatly from tariffs on China. And, I didn't really think that through until you just actually brought it up and said, look at the monthly. And, but there's some real big companies there, some really big, companies that are doing the defense, names. And this thing worked out like a freaking charm. But then he had to go and do a mean tweet, shake me out, him and his mean tweets. So what else you got? Yeah, whenever you see this RSP divided by the SPY, I'm not a fan of this. It doesn't make me feel warm and fuzzy. And it usually means that, some things are going to come in harder than I think they are. So I have had a great, like from a short-term, thank you, John. I've had a great week from a short-term trading perspective. And the only thing that I see them doing is I see them going after the next group of names and killing the next group of names. And then it's the next group of names. And it's like, if you really look what they're doing, Jacob, and you probably picked up on this already, they're rotating what they're selling. And so you almost want to go look at go and say, what were the first group and sectors that they were selling? Uranium, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And then go and say, well, what's the last group that they sell? And, I have that saying, they come for the generals last. And, you just don't know, are they going to, tenderize them or are they going to, guillotine them? And that's a big crowded trade. So the RSPs, definitely, that's a red flag, hands down. So you have to tell me where to go in Tokyo. So I'm gonna go on the road. I'm going to road trip. I can feel it coming. It really is the place to be. Bro, some of these names yesterday are just insane. Good morning from Phoenix. Good morning from Miami. I think the gold names are underrated. I don't feel the need that I have to do anything. And I'm sure you see the same pattern that I do. I don't feel the need that I have to do anything there. I was looking at Newmont the other day saying I should buy this. And that usually means gold's about to top. I'm not as bad with gold as I am with silver. But when I'm starting to look at like gold, like the gold names, like, oh, this actually looks really healthy. It's breaking out. Maybe it's time. You just run away screaming. Good morning from Sedona. Sedona's beautiful. I own Hertz. Wake me up when Ackman gets out. I think if you're buying this, you have to start thinking about this super long term, like years. And I'm fine with that. So that's how I trade these names. When I buy them like that, I wait for to come to fruition and I size accordingly. I think it's huge for Amazon. And what I think is that Carvana just, you have a huge short position. So they covered. I had a great short in this yesterday. I had a great short in this yesterday. I was shocked because it's usually a lot harder, but they made this super freaking easy off the, I actually started shorting it pre-market, and I just piled into it and, told you exactly where to get out. I mean, it's not rocket science. Say it. Okay. Positive divergence. Remember, you don't have to believe in RSI. RSI believes in you. So, if I was Carvana and I all of a sudden, you're going to start showing me cars on the marketplace, on Amazon marketplace, that's like, oh crap. I mean, if Amazon really wanted to dive into that market, I don't know why they just don't call Manheim and go, hey, you want a retail arm? I mean, talk about cutting people out. Jesus. You know, you cut that whole business out. Oh. I mean, that's a business model. Maybe they don't want to do it. Maybe they don't want the scrutiny. You got a lot of buying in AMD today, bro. A lot. I'd watch this. You got a lot going on there today. I think what Walmart's earnings really mean for the market is the same as Target. And I think that what you're going to see is like the TGX, like see how that faded? I think you have issues there with the big boxes. And I think the tariffs are coming home to roost. Remember, Walmart promised that they're going to eat the margins and make sure that they beat earnings. And they told you what their guidance was going to be. And they did it when all this started. They said it back here, guys, don't worry. We're gonna make sure that we meet our expectations and we meet our numbers. And everyone, and which meant that whatever they had to do to make sure they stayed with their earnings guidance, they were going to do for the year, right? Okay, that was April or May. They made the statement, and they followed through with it. Okay, on the earnings side, right? Okay, what happened? They missed. So that's telling me, like, what that tells me is that their earnings, the gross margins is way worse than we think it is. And that and that's hurting the companies. Now, is that hurting, the consumer? I don't know. I don't know how much Walmart is passing on the cost to the consumer. I don't have a freaking clue. And I'm not going to pretend that I do. And if somebody has a way of monitoring that, let me know. What Bank America did, and if you're in the community, I showed this last Sunday, like when we do that, private week ahead video. So if you're listening to this and you're in there, you can go see it. The tariffs, anything that's being heavily tariffed, the cost is going up. So it's definitely on an overall basis, it's definitely passing through. But you know what we're not seeing, and this is really interesting, that ties into your question. So I just disclosure, I own this. We bought it when it broke down. But EU and US are relaxing both sides today. Why aren't these names bidding up on that? Like, so they're doing it on, like, they're just not even bidding up on the news. It's really kind of weird to me that they're actually bidding down on the fact that the reduction on both sides. Right? I don't understand why that's happening, but I would think that would have spurred them, but it's not. And you're actually seeing them sell down on it. Every car maker selling down on it. So I don't know, man. There's a lot of moving parts to it, but I do think it's passing on to the consumer. And I don't know how much, but I do think it is. Wolf I own. I don't think there's really anything to do here. You have that convert, what they doubled. I think it priced. So it is what it is. You want to stay above water. If it's not above 9 by Friday, I'm out because I have married puts. What's up, Lynn? Yeah, until the market opens. Yeah, I don't know how it's going to be great. NVAX. This. I mean, did you have news today? I don't know if there's news on it or not, my friend. Well, clearly they did something wrong. I don't know. I don't know what the news is. So I don't really follow it that closely. I mean, you broke the 850. You need to get back above that. If you don't get above that today, you got a problem. I'd look at it that way. Yeah, they don't like that, do they? GCT. I'm gonna try and get through these all. I mean, clearly earnings was a monster. I think it's interesting how you're holding here. Any name that's holding above these key levels, like a 12, a 22, and a 55, and they're buying that dip. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely something to that. I mean, I get looking at that. I think you're getting into some of the minutia here. You might want to just take a sec and just look at it from all over and see what you're getting. So that's interesting. And then you might want to just kind of come here and see if that makes a difference. Yeah, there it is. So forget this and look from this last peak and drop a line. And then from there, you see like the value high. So you're struggling with that. So I'd watch that 33.69 level. You got to get through it. And you've already rejected a couple times. So there's your nemesis. That's why you're having an issue. Lulu, I have no interest in. Like zero. Tonight, right? Zero. They sell $100 workout shirts for men. For men. Yeah. It's crazy. Yep. Please hit the like button. Helps greatly. Virtual Volatility Club. We don't talk. It's crazy what they're doing. I know a couple guys that did it and moved the whole family over there because you can move the quality of life's insane. I don't know why this is up, but they create air today. I don't know, dude. What do you want from me? I don't know what to say to you. You want me to tell you it's going to be okay? It's not. It's not going to be okay. Just understand like your stock of the day, follow the trend. What I would tend to do with this stuff is, there's your VWAP. And from there, all you want to do is just make sure you don't break your VWAP. That's your whole game right there. Don't own this if it breaks a VWAP. Well, I mean, I have these puts on, but maybe I don't know, man. You're going to get an event. You're going to get some kind of event that's going to happen. And, you have both sides of the aisle, Republican and Democrat, both looking at this and going, what's going on here? You have these big streamers that are leaving that built their whole platform there. And then at the same time, you got these other guys that are going on there and just watching like what the heck goes on in there. So I don't know, man. I'm short. If they do, right? Yeah, he'll trade around his positions though. If it goes up too much through calls, he'll actually be net long. He's sickly brilliant. I went through the coffee. I didn't want to make coffee today, so I door dashed it and it was delicious, but then it's not enough. So now I'm troubled. No, we covered it. So yeah, you did miss it. I don't know where you've been, dude. I start at the same time every time, 8:15 sharp every morning. Try not to laugh. Right. If we take out fruits and vegetables, we're good. Oh, 100%, dude. I think RBLS could have a real problem. Like if this stuff picks up mainstream and you're going to your kids, and like when parents start finding out their kids, like, are you on this site? That's a very different conversation, isn't it? So I'm not really playing Tesla right now, man. You're welcome, bro. You have a stock there. That can work, but watch that level. Yeah, I'd be careful here, man. I see it, but that's a reversal, and it's on Toll Brothers, and they follow Toll Brothers. Maybe I should do that. All right, I got to jump. Trade to win, guys. Make good choices. Remember,